So these are assembly instructions for my Candy Dome thank you pop-up card. I'm going to start by assembling the words that pop up on the interior of the card. So I've chosen these colors because they are colors that are in my card base. So I'm just gluing all my layers together, trying to maintain an even border all the way around. So next we're going to move on to the cover of my card. This is the very top piece of my card and I'm just decorating it with some vinyl. I've taken most of the sticky off my transfer tape. All I did was stick the transfer tape to my jeans a few times just to make it a little less sticky, but it's still sticky enough to transfer my vinyl. This gold cardstock is Cricut True Brushed paper and I'm applying my sentiment using Cricut vinyl. So next I'm going to work on my acetate dome. So I've cut this out of Cricut foil acetate and it has a protective liner on it, which I am just removing. So I'm just folding down on the 8 score lines for that octagon that's in the center. And then I'm folding down on the 2 straight score lines on the end of each arm, and then that little tiny tab that's on the side. So I'm doing that for all 8 of those extensions. And then there's a score line on the right hand side of each one of these, and I'm just folding down on the score line and it creates a little triangular tab, and there are 8 of them. I'm just folding down on all 8. So next I'm taking red line tape, and I like red line tape for this because it's especially adhesive. I'm adhering it to each one of these tabs right at that score line. So from edge to edge of the tab and right along the score line for the tab. And I'm going to do that for all 8 of them. And then I'm going to use some tear tape. So this is double-sided tape, but it's on a paper backing, so it's easy to tear. So I'm just applying it past that very last score line, but right at the score line. I'm doing that for all 8 of them. This is all on the side of my acetate that's going to be facing upwards. So I'm flipping it over so I'm looking at the underside, and I'm going to apply more tape just past the score line, just over the pieces of tape. So I'm going to have double-sided tape on both sides. So next I'm going to take the liner off my red line tape on one of the tabs, it doesn't matter which one, and I'm just going to make sure that this little triangular tab is underneath the trapezoid shape. So I'm just tucking it under, gluing my tab to the neighboring panel and making sure that the cut line of that panel is right up against the score line of my tab, like so. So I'm just going to work my way around the entire shape, just repeating that, making sure that my little triangle is tucked underneath. So this is the interior of my shape, and I have all these slender little triangles folded over the neighboring panel so it closes my dome. And so now I'm just going to pull all of these flaps outwards like so. I'm just taking the liner off my double-sided tape all around the perimeter of my dome, and I'm laying it flat on my mat, and then I'm taking this ring piece and making sure that the flat shapes on my white piece mimic the flat edges on my acetate dome. I'm just lowering that piece on top of my dome. So all those flaps are adhering to the white ring. The base piece and the ring around my acetate and the 2 reinforcement pieces are cut out of white Cricut craft board. I'm going to put the larger one aside for now and putting glue all over the back of the smaller one, and I'm gluing it to the base piece. I'm just making sure that those holes match exactly, that they're stacked right on top of one another. And then I have this decorative piece. I'm just putting glue all over it. Now I cut this out of patterned cardstock, and I'm just gluing this on top, making sure that the hole is right on top of that center hole, and you should have a small little border around the opening. So next I'm taking these metal brads. So the head of the brad is about 1/4 of an inch, but the pins on the brad are about 3/8 of an inch. I'm just going to insert the brad in the center of my base, and then I'm going to take my other reinforcement piece and just threading my brad through the center of it, and then opening up the pins of my brad, holding on to my reinforcement piece, and I'm making sure that it's not too tight and that it spins nicely. And then I'm going to take more of that red line tape, and I'm just covering the underside, including my brad. All right, so next I'm going to fill my dome with candy, and then I'm going to release the liner on that double-sided tape. So I have my 8 pieces of double-sided tape exposed. I have my base piece. I'm going to flip it over so that I'm looking at my brad. I want to place this so that that straight edge on my trapezoid shape is mimicking or matching the straight edge on my dome, like so. So right now my dome is open, so what I've been doing is if I want to check that everything's in place, I just cover it with a piece of cardstock. I hold a piece of cardstock in place, and then I just take a look. And so far, so good. Next, I'm going to take the cover of my card. So the cover of my card has a score line on one side that forms a tab. I've just folded down on that score line. I'm removing the liner on my red line tape. So I'm flipping it so that the drawn side is downwards and the tab is on my right. And I'm just hovering over that hole because I want it to match up exactly, applying pressure where that double-sided tape is. And then I'm going to spin it, and I have 2 paces to decorate it. Now this is decoration plus, and it makes my panel more sturdy. So this is some Shimmer 80-pound cardstock. And then I have a print and cut piece. This is in the file. I used different free fonts in Design Space, and I created this word art. So my print and cut is done on 80-pound Cricut cardstock, and I want to make sure that this shape is stacked up over the opening. The candy I've used in my file are Smarties, but I made this opening big enough that you could probably get away with larger size candy. Notice the opening is now shut, and all I did to do that is I turned this around, and that will shut the opening. So before I put the cover on my card, I'm just going to add a little tiny detail that I just thought of. Probably not entirely necessary, but I thought it was a cute little detail. So I've cut the word turn out of vinyl, and my base panel happens to match my vinyl quite nicely. So I want those circles stacked up on top of one another. So next I have a piece that's labeled template for the foam tape, and I'm tracing around it. And this is parchment paper, loosely cut out around my parchment paper. I'm putting foam tape on the parchment paper itself. And I want to position foam tape all along the back of this panel. My template shows me where I can put foam tape. You don't want to go too close to this circle because this circle spins, it has movement. So by using the parchment paper, it reduces the amount of sticky residue on my scissors. With my scissors, I'm cutting on the inside of the lines that I've drawn on my parchment paper. I'm just going to transfer my foam tape onto my card base. So before I go any further, I'm just going to lay my template down, and I see that this is just too close. I want to make sure that that entire area is clear of foam tape, because so now I'm going to remove the backing on my foam tape. I'm just positioning this over my dome. I'm straightening it up so that there's an even border all the way around. I'm adhering it to my base and just testing it to make sure that it turns nicely. So now I'm going to do the interior of the card. This is my card base. I folded it in half on the score line. And then I have my decorative panels for the inside. So I'm just putting glue on the back of the panels and gluing them to my card base. So these are the elements for my mechanism. These are the layered pieces that I assembled before. So the U is going to be glued down to the panel that has no slits in the bottom. It's a solid piece. And the thank is going to be glued down to the piece that has little cutouts at the bottom. So next I'm folding on all the score lines for the mechanism, and then I'm putting glue from the score line to the edge of that side tab and folding my piece over, and then I'm gluing my other end to the tab, and then I'm just folding those tabs like so. And I have 2 identical pieces. I'm just folding down on the score lines to create tabs on each end. I'm going to take the blank one of the smaller pieces and I'm inserting it in the first set of cutouts at the front of my rectangular base. And then I'm going to take the one that's decorated with the word thank, and I'm going to position it in the second set of slits on my rectangular base. And then I'm going to turn my piece over, and I'm going to take those tab pieces, and I'm folding the tabs inwards and then just inserting the tabs so that they fit in the slits that are at the bottom of those 2 longer pieces. And I'm going to do that with both of them, and my tabs are in the same direction as I'm looking at it, they're both folded towards the back. I'm putting glue on the tabs. And next, I'm going to fold my piece flat, making sure that all those tabs are folded down. And then when you pop it up, you automatically have that grid pattern exactly the position you need it. And I'm flipping my piece over. I'm putting glue all over this panel. I'm positioning my blank piece so that that little curved bit on the bottom of my mechanism matches up with the curve that's at the bottom of my image, like so. And you want the bottom of this piece to be even with the bottom of your mechanism as well. Follows the shape here at the bottom. I'm going to flip my piece around, so now I'm looking at the front of it. So I'm putting glue all over that front panel. I'm laying it flat, and then I'm positioning my U so that the corner, the bottom corner, is right against where that slit is. Bottom of the decorated U piece is right at the bottom of my mechanism. So when it pops up, it looks like this. I have a sentiment panel with its offset, so I'm just gluing it down above the little opening for the candy. And then I'm putting glue all along the tab. I'm grabbing my pop-up portion and I'm just placing it right on the tab and closing my card, pinching down on my tab, making sure that that glue takes. And then I have the panel that goes on the inside like so. I have an extra panel at the back just to hide the join. So now I'm grabbing my card base, and the most important part of this mechanism working is the positioning of this piece. You want this corner and that corner to be positioned exactly on the score line between these two panels. Your mechanism is slightly towards the front, so it's not quite centered, it's slightly towards the front. So I'm putting a little bit of glue on the underside of the tab that's on my right hand side, all the while making sure that those two corners are on my score line. I'm going to put glue on the underside of the other tab. So this is the one that's on my left hand side. So when I close it, it all folds flat. And then when I open it, it pops up like so.